Good evening and welcome to Information Please, your Peoria Public Library on the air. I'm bringing you information about your library and your community. And this evening my guest is David Haste, who is the manager for Peoria of the city streets and sewers. That's quite a job.
Yes.
Lots of complaints, I bet.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, but you do a great job keeping things together. And
Thank you.
So I know it's been February you started on potholes, right? So tell us about the pothole situation this year after a horrible winter.
Well, really there's a number of reasons for potholes, pavement conditions, traffic, and environmental reasons. Freeze, a lot of rain, which we did have over the winter, and also heat will cause them. But we have a lot of pavement damage. We have a lot of potholes out there. We have crews out on a daily basis. The most important thing is that we do proper maintenance to prevent potholes, and potholes start with an opening in a street or a crack in the street or some type of an opening, and then it grows from there. So that's what we're seeing.
How do those cracks happen into the first place? It's the heat expanding, or the traffic's too heavy, or
all of those. And any time we have cracking or any type of crumbling or any kind of a depression in the street where it will hold water, then eventually that's going to turn into some more damage. We try anytime we get the chance to do that maintenance during the summer season, during the construction season with, I mentioned the crack fill and seal coating and different ways to seal that. I've mentioned before that pavement is similar to a roof on a house.
Yeah.
That anytime the water is allowed to go through that roof, well, bad things are going to happen, and that's the same thing with the street. So we try to do our best to seal that street up, but a lot of times within the amount of repairs that's needed during the construction season, we can't do all of it.
Right. And of course, when it's too cold out, you can't do much either.
Yes, we're limited on the materials that are available to us during the winter, and as far as their pothole repairs, we're pretty much limited to a cold mix, and the technology is better than what it has been in the past. As far as this mixture that we're getting is a permanent mix in the winter season. Even though it's a cold mix, it's still rated as a permanent mix. So that's pretty helpful. The patch stays in the hole a little bit longer with that, especially during the winter when we have wet conditions and freezing conditions. And the most important thing is the preparation before we patch the hole. We have to make sure that the hole is as clean as we can get it and clear of debris and somewhat dry.
Okay. Now, I know there's some great reporting systems that you can report potholes, and some of those are by phone. And I know that there's like an iPhone or iPad app where you can take a picture and send it in, and you have all that information, I think, on the city website.
Yes. Recently, the city has advertised our U-Report through our Peoria Cares, and we get a lot of requests on the U-Reports and Peoria Cares, either through phones or the internet or a number of different ways. The most important thing is a lot of times we don't get a phone number with it, a return phone number. So if the people reporting those issues, like potholes, for example, if they would give us specific locations, sometimes
be very helpful.
It would be very helpful. And our crews are pretty much focus on an exact location. If we get 100 blocks or different information like that, it's just not helpful. So the more specific information that we get, that would help us. Also return call, because there are times that some of the potholes that are reported may be on a county road, or they could be on a state road.
So you need to let them know they need to call someone else.
Yes, that would be helpful.
Yeah, it's interesting that people aren't really sure what is the city of Peoria and what isn't, but we have parts of Peoria that if you look at the map, they go in and out, in and out, in and out. And
right.
So how would you know where you are?
That's right. And usually somebody will report a pothole right after they hit it. So they may be maybe 1 or 2 blocks down the street, and then by then they look up and they see a cross street, and they'll call that pothole in at that cross street.
Rather
And it
than
may be a
it's-
block or 2 away. So
Yeah.
it would really be helpful for our crews to find that hole if you report it at that exact location. I know that's not easy to do every time, but it
Yeah.
would be helpful.
Well, the folks who are using their phone or their iPad to take a photo, or even their cell phone and texting it in or something, certainly you can turn on your GPS locations and give you an
Sure.
exact GPS of exactly where that photo is taken. So
Sure.
that's got to be somewhat of an advantage. I don't know how many people bother to do that, but
And I think that, and some people do, but I think most of the time they report it right after they hit it. So they're on the move, and it's not that easy to pull over. And a lot of times it's not that safe because they're on primary streets, and it's not real safe to get
Yeah.
out at that time.
But I'm sure the city workers are out looking for potholes as well. You're not just waiting for somebody to tell you they're there. How does that process work?
You're right, and especially during the winter. We know those holes are out there, and we pretty much know the streets that they're on because of the condition of the street. So we'll also send crews out during the winter season, especially after significant snowfall and especially rain. Rain does a lot of damage. It's not only the freeze-thaw during the winter season, but it's the heavy rain, and it washes the holes out along with traffic that will beat those holes, the fill that we put in the hole at a previous time. The rain will wash that material out. So we have a lot of damage during the winter, especially after rain. Most importantly, our plows will do damage. Not so much to a street in good repair, but also
Right.
one that has had a number of patches in the past. If it's not level across on the pavement, our plows will take some of that material out also. We have very heavy plows. Our plows are close to 1.5 tons, and they'll ride right down on the pavement of the street. And that's quite a bit of weight
Right.
on the pavement.
Well, Peoria has some pretty old streets. I mean, it's an old community, and you've got, what was dirt trails and then became brick and
Sure.
then paved, and so it's got to be a constant problem because some of those roads, the really old ones, are some of the most heavily traveled, I'm sure.
Yes, and you're right. We have a lot of old pavement, pavement that needs to be replaced, but we can't replace them all
Right.
in 1 year, so it's going to take time.
Yeah.
But it really helps when we're not aware of some potholes and we get some calls and we go out and we
People tell you.
make the repair. So it's really helpful to get that phone call.
Do you think you have more potholes on the heavily traveled main roads or residential streets?
Probably the primary streets, more traffic. I mentioned our plows. We do a lot of
Yeah.
plowing on the primary streets, and we have a number of streets that can be replaced. And so we have crews out on those streets because we know where they're at.
Okay.
But not every day. During the winter, we'll have several more crews out than, for example, during the construction season or at this time. We're doing a lot of street sweeping right now and some other type of maintenance. So during the winter, when we get the heavy complaints, and we have more crews out.
Okay. Well, and your street sweeping is probably in preparation for rain, which you just mentioned that rain can really wash out and damage the streets, but also everybody's concerned after last year's, monumental record-breaking floods about flooding. And so does street sweeping help at all with this water in the pavement?
It does. And early in the spring, we'll get the sweepers out as soon as we can. Once we know we're out of the snow season and we're pretty much clear of that, then we'll start our street sweeping operation. We'll sweep the entire city. There's a lot of debris that's left on the pavement after the winter or during the pavement or during the winter, and plus from last fall, there's some leaves that remained from
Right,
that
because
street sweeping.
last fall was a funny season, and
Yeah.
there was issues even with picking up yard waste because of the way the weather went, and
Right.
so many leaves didn't fall down, and then
Yeah.
Thanksgiving was late, and just kind of a mess. So
Right.
the streets probably reflect that.
Yes, we had a lot of late leaves come down, and after we put the sweepers away, we were preparing for the winter, so we didn't get all the leaves. So now we're picking those up during the spring now. So that really helps to prevent the debris to pile up on top of the inlets. And all the drains on the corners need to be clear of debris, and that's where we have most of our problems, and we have debris on top of the tops of the
corner ones.
inlets and the drains. So that's pretty much, usually we don't have much of a problem with any obstruction in the pipe. It's usually, if you see standing water, it's usually the top is filled.
Blocked, yeah. And so it's not, what happens though when the river comes up as high as it does? Does water ever go back up through onto the pavement?
It does, and that's what our concern was last year,
Right.
down around the river. So a lot of the inlets down in that area will discharge out into the river. But once the water came up, the water couldn't get out,
Yeah,
so
there's
it
no
would
place
come
to
back
go.
up. No.
Yeah, well, to be expected from a river town.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we forget that we are a river town, and
Right.
we've, kind of paved over a lot of stuff that used to be swamp that could handle that.
Right.
But it all works out eventually.
Right.
Yeah. And so, what do you see in the future as far as being able to repave and redo streets? People don't want the potholes, but they also don't want the inconvenience of the street being shut down to pave it, because then that slows them down too. You just
Sure.
can't please people, I guess.
Yeah.
But are there any major plans for repaving things this year?
We have some pavement preservation projects going on this year, seal coating, different surface treatments, some slurry seals, and also some overlays. So there's a number of projects that are going on this year. The most important thing is the proper maintenance, and it may not be the overlays and the seal coat, but just the crack fill and the smaller type of maintenance that really helps us out. We can cover much more area by doing basic maintenance a lot of times that will really pay off in the long run, and I think that's the thing that we notice now that hasn't happened in the past, and only because a lot of that was cut out of the budget, and it was nobody's fault. And
well, it's still, I think what people don't understand is the economy is starting to come back, but for those of us who work with a city government, the backlash continues to go on because of the fact so much of the money comes from taxes, and when the property values have dropped, then there's not as much money available in the city budget. Just nobody cut anything, nobody did anything to it. There's just, not that rising tide of property values. And so any of us, the library, the city streets, anything like that, budgets took a huge hit because of things that happened years ago, and it will take a while to catch up.
Right. And we see the results of that on the street, and it's disappointing for me because I do maintenance, and when I see the conditions of the street, that's disappointing. But it happened, and now we have to move forward and make some big decisions on how we're going to make these improvements.
Right, and then there's projects which I assume you know about, maybe you don't, all that ripping up of streets down around the warehouse district in Washington, and things have been blocked off and all that. So what all goes on with that?
And that's really a good example of how the streets can be, because once that's completed, that's going to be a beautiful area down there. The landscaping, we have a roundabout, and so there's a lot of good things happening in that area. And when it's all completed, the growth down there is just going to be pretty exciting to see.
Well, that'll be fun. It'll be fun to be able to drive through there and see all that. A roundabout, I didn't know that. Roundabouts scare people. I think people still aren't sure about the roundabout that's over in East Peoria. You see people going all different directions. They don't know what to do. Yeah. But I think we'll learn.
Yeah,
I'm sure at one time people didn't know about traffic lights either. So.
And it's it's just a change.
Sure.
But initially there was some hesitation, but Now, the ones that we have put in throughout the city, you don't hear much about it. I think there's a really nice one on Glen Oak there at Pennsylvania, and that was a great project. Really turned out nice. Our engineering department did a fantastic job putting that together and just enhanced that area really nicely. So it really turned out good. And that's just, I think that might have been one of the first ones the city did.
Yeah, and that's by the hospitals and
Yes,
all, which
right.
is a lot of confusing traffic going around there.
Right.
So, yeah. So what did they design it and you pave it? Is that how that works?
Yeah. That was a project that I think it might have been designed in-house, and
Okay.
it was a contract work on that, but it really turned out nicely.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
And anybody who wants to see what a roundabout looks like, that's a good one
Yes.
to go up and cruise through. And I
Right.
have been through that several times, so
Good.
and done just fine, in spite of my fear of roundabouts. Another thing besides potholes that's threatening our property these days is the emerald ash borer. And I think people who are outdoor people may have heard about the emerald ash borer, but if you're not real in tune with the trees and things that might be in your yard, this is probably something to worry about. What is the emerald ash borer?
The emerald ash borer is a beetle that was discovered in southeast Michigan in 2002, and since then has been a problem, mainly in the Midwest, for all municipalities, because the emerald ash borer is responsible for killing the ash trees. And what it does, the larvae will feed just inside the bark, and pretty much just kill the tree. It prevents the nutrients and water from circulating through the tree, and within 1 or 2 years it'll kill the ash tree.
Do we have a lot of ash trees that are on public streets or that belong to the city?
We started a survey last year, and we have probably 35% of the city surveyed, and for a number of reasons, hazardous trees, and it wasn't so much the ash trees, but we have over 600 ash trees in the right-of-way within that area, pretty much right around maybe Forest Hill South. And the ash tree it hasn't been spotted in our area yet, but
But it doesn't take much
No.
to bring it here.
Right. And we've looked into this, and we're coming up with a plan on what we're going to do. We've been to some workshops and just to gain more knowledge on the beetle. And so there's a number of things that you can do, and a lot of communities are just removing all of their ash trees on the right-of-way. Or there are treatments that you can do on the trees, and a lot of education, because getting the word out is important, because there's a lot of ash trees on private property too, and if these trees aren't taken care of properly with some type of a treatment or maybe even a removal, they can become a hazard in the right-of-way.
It seems kind of non-productive to remove a tree that isn't sick yet. And is there some cost consideration that it's cheaper to remove it than to treat it?
There are. The treatment isn't a one-time thing. It's every
Ongoing.
other year for about 10 years, or until that food source is no longer around. But those are all things that we're looking at, and we're coming up with a plan now, and we'll have more information on that. But it is a concern for us, because it could be a hazard in the right-of-way, because within 1 or 2 years the tree is completely dead in some cases. So mainly because of a budgetary concern, and if all these trees are dead at one time, then a removal cost will be pretty expensive.
Right, right. So, yeah, but people who want to know about emerald ash borers, I'm sure can find out at their local nursery. I'm sure we have information at the library
Sure.
We can print it out for you, direct you to it. We're not experts. We can't tell you ourselves, but we can sure find it. So I know it's, it was introduced in the 1990s in wood packing material imported from Asia. Seems like a lot of invasive species end up in things that are shipped or just get here accidentally.
Yes.
And then you've got one really lively thing that just takes off and survives and does horrible destruction. I know one of the things that they find them in is ash logs and firewood. And I know I have seen with camping, don't transport wood because you're taking things from one place to another. But it can happen so easily that people aren't aware of it or don't know how it's transported, or I don't know if these things can jump on your truck and come with you or not.
The distance that the actual beetle will travel is probably only about a half a mile, so it really doesn't move very far.
A slow incursion.
Yeah, and that's the reason that they want to get the word out to not move any type of firewood or any kind of wood product.
Like if your ash tree dies,
yes,
don't chop it up, use it for firewood. Take it someplace else, to a campsite someplace else, because that's how you're going to transport it.
Yeah.
And if you don't know that the tree died from the emerald ash borer, you have no clue. So a lot of people don't pay. I don't know that much about my trees. I mean, I try to be concerned, but I'm not a person who has in-depth knowledge of gardening and trees. So.
And that's what's so important about that education part of it, because most people don't know. And we've heard a little bit about don't move firewood, but there really isn't a reason why you shouldn't move firewood. So I think that hasn't come from the city, that's come from elsewhere. But the thing is that we need to get that word out and educate people about the ash trees in their private property and what to do, and make suggestions on how to either treat or removal. So,
well, maybe you can come and do a seminar at the library and get people. I imagine some people don't even know that they have an ash tree on their property.
Right, exactly.
So it would start with, this is what an ash tree looks like, and move on from there.
Sure.
And of course, there's so many other trees in our area that have come and gone because, of some sort of infestation like this. That I know that the chestnut trees are one that most of the old varieties were gone long ago. And that's something people don't even realize should be here as chestnut trees.
Right.
So it would be sad to lose another variety.
And it would be. And if we can treat some of these trees that are in good condition and save them, then we'll make that attempt. But it's still something that we're looking at.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. Well, we just have a few minutes left, so I want to go back and talk again about the potholes. You're doing everything you can to get as many of them filled in as possible. And people do have many ways to report those. Do you want to tell us again the best way to report and what you want them to tell you about potholes? Sure.
There's online, the U-Report is helpful, Peoria Cares. Also, we have a main number at the city. That number is 494-8850. And that's the Public Works number. They'll make a service request out. We'll give that to issue a work order for the crew, and we'll get that within 48 hours. We're trying to get those potholes completed.
That's a pretty quick turnaround.
It is, and we get, depending on the number of requests that we get, we'll have to change up maybe to more crews. But it really depends on the weather conditions. If we get a lot of rain, well, we know we're going to have to get some more crews going on potholes. But it's starting to slow down. The weather's improving, and hopefully that won't be so much of an issue.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, if you come to our local history department, you'll see back in the day when the streets were dirt and when it was what they called mud season, people just stayed home.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think that would be a better way to do it. Just stay home. Don't have any expectations that you're going to go anywhere.
Right.
Save the streets.
Right.
Is there anything people can do in their own neighborhoods to help keep their streets in better shape? I mean, I know it's your job to sweep them and, keep the water off the roads, but is there anything citizens can do on their little block?
A real small job that would really help us out is just to keep that top of that drain open, because we have close to 9,000 drains throughout the city, and of course we can't
Sure.
maintain all of those, but if the property owners would notice down on the corner, if that inlet is plugged with debris, if they could just clear that off, that would be a real big help for us.
Well, that might help them too, to keep water out of their
Sure.
basements and just not to be walking through big puddles all the time.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something you can do, out on your evening walk. If you see something
Sure.
clogging the drain, just
Mm-hmm.
grab it with your foot or whatever if you can, pull it off, and
That would
even
be
a
lot
limb
of
or
help.
something starts to catch
Sure,
everything else
sure.
and keep it all from going down.
All of that debris in the curb line will eventually make its way down to that inlet, and so that from time to time they'll get plugged up. So we need some help getting those cleared off.
Okay, well that would be good, and that's a very good hint for people.
Sure.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And David Haste has been kind enough to come and share some insights into our pothole situation. Hope you haven't hit one, but if you have, be sure to report it with the exact location to the city with either an app or by calling the phone number. If you need those numbers and can't find them, you can call the library at 497-2000, and we'll be glad to look them up for you or help you with that. We can also help you at the library with finding information about the emerald ash borer, a very dangerous insect that's headed this way and can kill your ash tree. We can even help you find out if you have an ash tree on your property if you don't know that. There's so many things coming up at Peoria Public Library, including summer reading. Now's the time to sign up. It doesn't start till June 9th, but next time you're in, sign up. You'll be ready to go. You can report, win all kinds of great prizes, and just have fun reading all summer. We'll see you next week on Information Please.